Hi everyone, I'm Luke Hector and this is The Broken Meeple, a show devoted to board games where I sometimes tell you to buy games and sometimes tell you not to, just not necessarily in equal proportion. So this is my Rate My Shelf series. I think this is the 9th one I've done now, where I basically take a random Calyx square and talk about the games that are on it. It's kind of keep or cull, kind of not. It's more talking about the games that I've got here, why I have them, why I like them, and whether they would be keepers for life or potentially culls when I come to have to find space for new games, because there's only so much space on these shelves. Therefore, usually when new games have to go on the shelves, I have to think, right, which game can I now get rid of? The idea with this, though, is also to kind of tell you how they stood the test of time. So some of these games I've had not for too long, some of these games I've had for years, and so you'll be able to kind of get an idea as to whether the game can stand the test of time or whether they're starting to get a little bit too old. So we got 5 games here on this shelf, which is literally over there. It's by the wall, on the side, next to where all my LCGs are parked. And there's quite a mix of games here, although predominantly they are kind of a mixture of Z-Man games and Mayfair games, with the exception of Ra here, 21st Century Games. This is the new reprint version. Let's see, 5 games. Why don't we try just moving it all like that and to the side for now, and we'll stick with Ra. So this is the new version, Ian O'Toole's artwork. It's not the like ridiculous deluxe version I think had like metal pieces and stuff like that, but it is still pretty damn good quality components for what you get. I mean, seriously, do you need better components when you've already got this giant sack full of stuff here? I mean, it's huge. I don't want to take it out too far though, because trying to get this packed is a little bit of a pain with this bag. You have to kind of flatten everything down in order to get it in there. But I've got cardboard tokens and I've still got the boards, but the fact that you still have like ridiculous mammoth pieces of wood like this, I mean, it's kind of insane. That is literally just a marker for the player, nothing else.
Remember me! Remember me!
And then you've got this marker, which is equally just thick wood for, you know, effectively a round tracker. And then everybody's got a bunch of these things, which again, I feel like I should be like biting on them to check how many karat gold they are. It's insane. And then you've got all the tiles themselves, which, okay, as I'm nice, I'll get a few of them out. Here we go. So again, chunky cardboard tiles. I think you get like ridiculously thick versions, possibly even plastic ones when you have the real big version, which has a bigger box. But seriously, that's just overkill. You really don't need that version, especially if it's going to cost you a bomb. Now this is an auction game where basically you draw tiles out of a bag and you take it in turns, take a tile out and you place it on the track, and you may decide to start the auction or it may just happen automatically, and essentially everybody gets to bid with these little round tokens that essentially are your bid value. So you've only got 3 of them in a round. I think it might vary with player counts, but typically 3, and they're different values and there's one in the middle, and basically you go around in order, you put a token out if you want to, whoever has the highest wins all the tiles in the middle, as well as swaps their token with the number that was in the middle, so it might be a higher or lower value. And these tiles do different things, they score in various ways, and it's mostly occasionally set collection and avoid the bad stuff, with a few elements of who's got the most of this at the end of a round thrown in. You basically rinse and repeat this for 3 whole eras, where there's a little timer for how long an era can take, it's variable, and then see who's got the most points by the end. It's a pretty decent game overall, and I do like it, but I'm not the biggest auction fan typically. I really am quite picky with auctions. There are some games that I cannot stand that are auction based. I hate Power Grid. I really don't like that one. I don't particularly like QE, whatever it is, the weird one where you can write whatever you like. That one I just find breaks every time I play it. There are some of them that I'm like, and isn't Modern Art? Oh yeah, Modern Art's an auction game as well. Not a particular fan of that. But there are a couple that I do put my stock behind. I do like this one, and I do like High Society, a little filler auction game. I think that works. I like Biblios, which is down there, although I don't know if you'd call it auction. Maybe that's more bidding. It kind of depends. If the auction is just simple bidding, I quite like it, and the 3 games I've just mentioned are pretty simple bidding. I think when an auction is too open-ended, it can go to stupid figures like Power Grid and QE, it stops being that enjoyable for me. That being said, Ra is not without its problems, because as much as it's a relatively straightforward game and not too long, there's not a huge amount of variety in it. I mean, all the tiles that are in here, you're going to see. You're going to draw out most of that giant bag. So it's really just a case of the timing and everything. Apologies if you can hear traffic outside. But the other thing that kind of drives me nuts with this one is the passing of the bag. that gets really annoying and really grating. Basically, this giant bag, as soon as it's your turn, you take the bag, you draw a tile out, put it out, and then you're passing the bag on. And it's just constantly having to circulate that bag around a whole table endlessly for the entire game gets a little bit annoying. I mean, I swear, turns take less time to fulfill your turn in terms of your choice of action or what you're going to do than it does to actually draw the tile out of the bag and pass it on in the first place. It can be like that. I know it's a little weird quibble, but you know, it does get grating over time, constantly having to pass this bag around.
You have to use your hands? That's like a baby's toy.
That alone is not enough to kill the game for me. It's just one of those annoying things I have to bear with. But that being said, as much as this is a recent version, and it is a pretty decent game, I don't know if it's one I'm going to hang on to forever. It's like, I'm in that camp of, I like it, but I don't love it. And my collection kind of needs games that I love, not just games I like. So usually if I want a game of this, somebody else will have a copy and I can just play theirs. It's possible that game cafes might have it, or game libraries. Having to store it in the box is a bit of a pain because the bigger box I think is big enough to hold everything in without problems. But here I have to put up with constant box lift because trying to get that bag flat on top is just an absolute pain. So there's some little quality of life issues that do get in my way, but also I like it, I just don't love it. So this would probably be on the Cull pile, you know, not because I don't like it, but it is an old auction game. Yes, it's been modernized for this, but only in the sense of the pieces look great, and they are fantastic. But the game hasn't changed. It's the same Reiner Knizia game it was before, and I'm just kind of like, I want to move on to something else. So, potential Cull, but it will stay in the collection for now. But it's definitely on the lower end of enjoyment. All right, now, most boring title award goes to Majesty for the Realm. It really does. This is such a boring title. Majesty for the Realm. I mean, why do you even need For the Realm? Is there any point to put For the Realm in it? Like, I wouldn't recognize it. And if Majesty's too boring, well then come up with a better name for your game. But this is essentially from the same designer who did Splendor. And Splendor's on my shelf. It's still going strong. I still think it's one of the best gateway games there is. But this one was a sequel, which is not that far off in terms of complexity to Splendor. It's not much more, but it's a very underrated game. And the mistake it had was that it came out in the UK, I think around December after Christmas. Yeah, you know, that tiny little slot. So trying to get people to even recognize this game as a thing was kind of impossible. And they didn't do a very good job of, you know, advertising it. But it's a very straightforward game, and I've even pimped it up slightly because one annoying thing it did have was not enough money. It's got these like really cool chips for the money, which is nice. It's nice that they've got these chips. The only problem is there's nowhere near enough of them for like 3 or 4 players. You are changing up constantly. So I took a bag of spare like cardboard chits from the last time I had villagers, you know, these ones. And basically, because this game doesn't come out that often, I figured, you know what, I'll put a bag of these in, and these are the replacement money, because whether I'm using chips or not, I don't really care. It's like, as long as it's functional money. But this one's very straightforward. I mean, it's one of those games, a bit like Canvas that I was reviewing, where essentially you have like locations in front of you, and there's A and B sides for a bit of variety. But where's the rest of the cards? Oh yeah, the small ones, you idiot. And you've got these characters that are essentially like different varies, like royalty or peasant or chef, and that's chef. I'm sure it's a different name, probably the innkeeper. But the idea is that these will be laid out in a row, and it's that typical game where you can pick the first one for free, and then you've got to pay to get the other ones afterwards. And you pay with these basically little white meeples. So it's like Century Spice Road and things like that. And basically when you take one, it goes underneath the location. It might trigger other effects, but basically they all score in different ways. You have to worry about people coming around with knights, because if they do, they could kill off one of your like lowly peasants effectively, but you can defend against it with guards, and there's a couple of other weird little scoring variabilities here. But it also rewards you for diversity and like loading up on something. You'll get a decent amount of points if you get like a ton of innkeepers, but if you're able to get like one of each on all your things, you'll also get a lot of points that way. And depending on whether you have the A or the B sides of these locations will vary how many points they're worth for those, as well as what they are. And there's an element of, if you put somebody under there, opponents will also get a benefit. But it's a very simple game, and we've seen this mechanic used in several games, but this one's just a very nice, quick, 30-minute, effectively a filler really, 20 to 30 minutes, 2 to 4 players, no solo mode just shoved in for the hell of it, no stupid 5-player nonsense. The artwork is drop dead gorgeous. I mean, really solid, nice artwork. I wish there was actually more of it in the game. And it's very easy to teach and very quick to play. It does a good job. Is it as good as Splendor? Probably not. You know, Splendor just manages to scratch that itch of a really solid gateway game. But this one is still pretty solid. It comes out every now and again. Now, do I want to hang on to it forever? That remains to be seen, but because it's a nice quick game to get out and because you know, it's a mechanic that pretty much everybody knows, it's one that I know I can get played if I need it to, even though it is a bit of a hard sell with that stupid cover and title. Canvas I reviewed recently and it uses the same mechanic. Would I rather play this over Canvas? Hard to say. Canvas is a lot easier than this game. I mean, Canvas is float away light, even with the expansions, although this is a lot less of a pain to store than Canvas, so there is that. But, you know, maybe the two of these will start duking it out for supremacy at some point, but for now I'll hang on to this. You know, I'll keep it. It does the job, and, you know, if I do get rid of it, I'm not entirely certain I'll see another copy of it ever, so it's certainly worth keeping tabs on it, but yeah, I'll hang on to it for the time being. Alright. Let's move on to Isle of Skye. I have not played this in ages, and I remember playing it quite a bit in the past, but lately I just really haven't done much with it. It's an Alexander Pfister game, although it's also co-designed with Andreas Pelikan, one of those two, and it's a tile laying game. I like tile laying games. I've got Carcassonne. Actually, no, I don't. No, I sold Carcassonne ages ago. Wow, I don't even have Carcassonne. But I do have Small Islands, that's it. Yeah, because Small Islands killed Carcassonne for me, that was it. But this is another cool tile-laying game, and it has the Druid expansion in it. Why does it not have the other one before it? Because the one before it, which was called the Journeyman expansion, is complete garbage.
Oh, yes! I hate this! It is revolting!
Druids adds basically a couple of extra types of symbols and another type of buying phase, like the second tile you can get in the buying phase, and essentially they score for various different things. You know, it's a, that's the rulebook for it, and it's very easy to throw in, it's very easy to play with, and it's pretty much an auto-include even if you're teaching the game. So Druids was a good expansion. Journeyman pretty much changed the entire nature of the game and made it stupidly overly complex. Remember Alexander Pfister's like kind of shtick where you see all these like flow jars and all these player boards with a ton of symbols and arrows pointing everywhere and stuff? Well, take that and shove it into this game. It's like taking something out of his 3-hour Euros and bunning it into here, and it really doesn't need it. So do not get Journeyman, and you can tell it's popular because everybody plays with it. Yeah, no, it was stupid. Now here, what have I got? Oh, I've got a folded space insert for this as well, so it's a bit easier for me to set up. But the premise is quite simple. You essentially have like a little bidding phase where you've got objectives that you have to like try and score points for as the game goes on. But essentially you take these tiles and you'll have a bunch of them and you're like, oh yeah, these roads can connect, or this has symbols, or this has animals that I want. And then you put them behind your screen with cash effectively to sort of signify, right, this is how much it's going to cost for another player to buy the tile off me. And so you might see a tile that you really like, in which case you might need to price it quite high to stop people taking it off you. But if you do retain the tile, you've got to pay it. So you're trying to find that balance between not spending too much of your money, but also not having a player take a tile you really want. It's a really cool angsty decision, and it doesn't take that long to figure out. You know, these turns don't take long, but once you've sorted out what tiles you've got, you then build up your map, and you build up in such a way as to score a lot of points. I mean, if you played Carcassonne, you kind of know how this stuff works. But with the Druids thrown in, this is a very cool game, but I have not brought this out in ages. The fact that I'm doing this video now actually makes me want to shove this in the game bag for next time. So this is definitely a keeper. It is a solid game, but I guess it's just sat at the wrong end of the room for too long, and I've just never thought to learn it again and bring it out. I mean, it's not like it's a lot of rules to learn, it would be easy enough, but yeah, maybe it's time this one got a little resurgence actually, because I do remember liking it. You know, I mean, I do like some of Alexander Pfister's stuff, although I must admit, this and Broom Service, yeah, I do tend to like more of his smaller co-design stuff than his bigger stuff, although there are the odd exceptions. But, you know, this is a really solid tile laying game. I think it still goes strong. It doesn't feel dated or anything, and definitely a keeper for me. In fact, I reckon this one might even hit the game bag at some point, so good to remind myself of that little gem. Right, this one, Right, Pillars of the Earth. Ken Follett's based on some book. Who gives a crap? Because it really doesn't matter. It's like, yeah, based on the best-selling novel by Ken Follett. Best-selling? I mean, to be honest, I can't really comment. I don't read. I literally do not read.
That is why you fail.
I mean, I've got an Arkham Horror short story book in the other room, but that's about it. But honestly, outside of work, the only things I'm reading are rule books for games and cooking books. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I don't really read anything else. I don't have the time, and I just don't have an interest in reading stuff. I used to listen to audiobooks now and again, like I listened to the Lord of the Rings trilogy, the Hunger Games trilogy, Ender's Game, and a few other, like, you know, fairly well-known IPs, but never Harry Potter apparently. But the audiobook was fine. I could put it on in the car and I could listen to it while doing other stuff. But even then, I just feel like listening to music now or watching YouTube, because this was very much pre-dominance of YouTube, I think, when I used to do Audible. But, you know, I digress. Pillars of the Earth is a box that's way too big for what it is, and I'm really not kidding, because look at it. I mean, for crying out loud. I take this out, and yeah, there's the board. There's the pieces. Yeah, this was a box way too big. You could get it in the Isle of Skye box if you just made this board a little bit smaller.
We just make boxes here.
That being said, oh my god, do I love this board. This has to go up in like the top 5 prettiest boards. Look at this thing. I've used it as photos for like game clubs nights and stuff, you know, like to advertise things. And oh my god, it looks so gorgeous. This is Michael Menzel, and you know, this is what he does best when it comes to board games. Not necessarily designs the best. He did the Legends of Andor, and that was kind of meh. But when he does a board, like in Terramara or this one and various others, oh man, I want the game just to stare at this board. Look how beautiful it is. The artwork, the detail. You can see people working in various places. There's little Easter eggs, like you might see a cat somewhere or a piece of another game. And it's just such a joy to look at when you're playing this. But the game is actually really decent and fun and very simple. Basically, these action spaces will resolve in order, but first you have to get your builders on the space, which are basically pawns drawn out of a bag. They're drawn out at random, and when it's drawn out, you either pay as much money as the space it's going onto to put it out onto an action space now, or you leave it there, another one gets drawn and it will be cheaper, and you basically carry on until all the pawns are put out. So if you want to put it out early to get an action space you want, you got to pay a lot of money, and gold is very limited. But then if you leave it for a while, you don't get to pay that much money, but then maybe somebody's taken the card you wanted or the space you wanted, and so again you got to strike that cool balance. It's a neat little game, but it is starting to show its age. I think this one came out in the 90s, I think it's that old. I don't know, this might be worth a look in the rulebook. Would the rulebook actually tell me how old this game is? Oh, copyright 2007. Okay, I thought this came out a lot earlier than that. Maybe it did and I'm just not aware of it. But like I say, this is a fairly oldish game by today's standards. And it is starting to show its age a bit. I mean, it does work, and I know people are going to ask, well, what about the expansion? I have played this with the expansion. I do not own it, because it's impossible to get hold of. And honestly, the expansion is fine, but I don't consider it really a must-buy. It functions, and it does what it sets out to do, but I don't consider it to be the game's broken if you don't include it. But it's very simplistic. I mean, you've got action spaces that are just take a card, get victory points, and the rest of the game is just basically convert resources into a card, engine build, and get victory points. You know, and it does it fine, but the other aspect is this drawing the pawn out of the bag. You have to understand that this is a light game, and there's a decent amount of luck involved, because there's no way to really mitigate drawing the pawns out of this bag. You have to just accept that sometimes you might get hosed on that front. You know, I've got the money to go to a space. So does my opponent. We both want the same space. They draw theirs out of the bag. Oh, look, they drew another one of theirs out of the bag. Where are all mine? Oh, they all come up later. You know, so sometimes the game literally just likes to punch you in the face and there's nothing you can do about it, which does off-put me a bit. And as much as I love the look of this board, I just don't know how often I'm likely to want to play this again, because whenever I feel like, oh, do I want to take a light game out, this is very dry, it is very mechanical. I just think maybe it's showing its age a bit. This is going on the Cull pile potentially, but the problem is trying to get hold of this is now impossible these days. I'm not aware that they reprinted it or anything, so this is kind of like, it won't sell for very much on a bring and buy, but it's not one I'm ever going to see again, let alone play again, if I do get rid of it. So part of me is thinking that, but then the box is twice the size it needs to be, and if I'm not playing it, why do I own it? There is that. Maybe it's worth giving it to a game cafe instead of selling it, in which case then I could actually play it if I want to, unless I move out the area. That might be a better idea, actually, but we'll have to see. As I say, I think it's fine. It's a decent worker placement. It certainly gave me a lot of enjoyment, but I think since 2007, the game is starting to show its age and probably needs to move on. So it's decent, but yeah, a product of its time. Alright, and then finally, the only Pandemic game in my collection. I am done with Legacy game Pandemics. I've played all 3 of them. Check out my review for Pandemic Leads in Season 0 to find out what I think of that one, as well as the spoiler video, which talks about my rankings for all 3 of them. But Pandemic Iberia is the one normal Pandemic game that I have retained onto, because out of all the spin-offs, and believe me, I am getting sick and tired of these wretched spin-offs with this game, constantly just basically trying to cash cow out. I mean, Fall of Rome, an invasion into Rome set in like BC times, and it's got Pandemic on it. For crying out loud, at least give the invaders a cold or something. But, I digress. This one is my favourite of the spin-offs though. I've tried Rising Tide, pretty meh, very fiddly. I've tried the Cthulhu one, it's fine. Probably one of the better ones that there is, but again, it's just kind of weird that it's Pandemic Cthulhu. I've tried the little dice spin-offs, not particularly much to shout about. I tried Fall of Rome, bit bored with that one, I wasn't particularly into it. Were there any other ones? I don't know, there's been a pandemic for everything. There was that spin-off Pandemic Air Force One thing, or whatever it was, where you were basically flying logistics around the world. That was pretty meh. So most of the time, the Pandemics are, fine in terms of their spin-offs, but I would rather play this one definitely over the original Pandemic. The original one, even with expansions, is fine. This is definitely the better. And I love the fact that it says limited collector's edition, and then suddenly you could find one on every store on every shelf. Yeah, limited. It's like very limited. But this one is still a very solid game. I mean, you can play it like pretty much normal Pandemic. It's got a very nice looking board, very nice sort of elegant board. But, you can play it, and I've even got a folded space insert for it apparently. Oh, nice. But basically the main difference with this one is you can sail around the island, which improves your maneuverability, and you can build railroad tracks on the island in order to go from certain spots a lot quicker. Obviously it takes action points and stuff to do, but it might be what you just need. And I like the fact that it does help to increase the maneuverability a bit, because in normal Pandemic, you do find yourself a little bit stuck on one end of the world sometimes, unless you've got the convenient city card to get you somewhere. Here, you can build the tracks or use the ports to try and get round, and it does enable you to kind of do a lot more with the board. Other than that, the rest of the game's exactly the same. You've got 4 diseases and you're trying to cure them, but you can even use some of the variants in the game, which one of them involves like people you've got to heal, which is fine, adds a challenge, but I don't desperately use it. But the one I do like is it allows you, I don't know where they are, the cards are in here somewhere, but they basically allow you to vary the diseases. So they actually act like cholera or the plague or whatever, they act like they're, actual ones they're based on, and so each disease has a special role. It's a decent edition of Pandemic, and I think I'm still going to hang on to this one because Pandemic is a game that a certain group of friends of mine, the ones I played the Pandemic Legacies with, do enjoy. So occasionally I do want to bring out a game of Pandemic Iberia. And even for gateway gamers, this is a good one to bring out if I just want to enjoy a co-op. Question is, I've forgotten if my friends own this one. And if they own this, maybe there's less reason for me to own it. But then again, it's nice to have one Pandemic in the collection, and this is definitely my choice of all the Pandemics that have ever been released. I don't think there is a better version of it. I mean, the Legacies don't really count, because once you're done, you're done. And even then, the Legacy games do get to a point during the campaigns where you're like, okay, is this over now? So this is definitely the best of the lot. It's nice to hang on to. I'm going to hang on to it. This will be a keeper for now. I'll see what my friends have got in terms of their copy of Iberia, and maybe I'll just have to bring that out sometime, as something a little bit simpler on a night. I mean, yeah, you can play it solo, but I got other games that I could play solo. So, Pandemic Iberia, still worth it. Right, whew. There we go, 5 games off of that little shelf there for Z-Man and Mayfair for the most part. And what do we have? 3 keepers and 2 potential culls. Yes, Ra could end up leaving the collection eventually, and Pillars of the Earth is certainly debatable, but Majesty for the Realm is still worth hanging on to. Iberia is still a good version of Pandemic, and I actually want to get Isle of Skye played the next time I go to a game club. It's a nice simple little game, so I better relearn the rules to that over the weekend. But that's it for me on this episode of The Broken Meeple. If you like what you see, then thumb it up on YouTube and let me know your comments down below. Talk about these 5 games. Do you love them? Do you hate them? Have you had them and decided, they didn't stand the test of time, or have you never played it but you really want to? Let me know your thoughts and whether you agree with what I've said about them. Until next time, remember, regardless of which shelf you're thinking of culling, it's still only a game, so bye for now.